My name is Lisette Cunningham. I am in the plantation office. I've been doing real estate for a few years, and and I've been really looking into what's going on with these different forms and stuff. So I'm here to kind of just help you guys with that.
She's being very modest. Lisette is amazing. She had her prior brokerage and now she's here with us, and we're awesome, blessed to have her. She has, not only is she very knowledgeable, but she is part of the ethics board, correct me if I'm wrong?
Professional standards at the board, yes.
At the beaches board. So
yes.
you're getting some very good, insightful information. So take it away.
All right, so here we go. So let's start. Everybody knows. All right, hold on a second. Maciel's calling me. Hello. Hey. Letty already made me host. Yeah, so we're already sharing. You might not be. Do we have 2 Zoom links? Okay, all right. You might have 2 different Zoom links out there.
Send the latest one on the Fort Lauderdale chat.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that right now.
Yeah.
Plantation too, I'll send.
And we should do that on the plantation chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
I don't want to start if people are still coming in from the other link, so let's give it a couple more minutes. You just sent that to me?
Yeah, because I needed.
All right, so apparently, yes, there were 2 links, so we're gonna give them a chance. She said there was about 33 people on that link. Maybe we can kind of filter through some concerns that people might be having right now. How's everybody feeling with these changes? This is awesome, right? Has anyone used any buyer broker agreements in the past? I know these are very common in other states.
Come on, guys. We can all discuss. We're here. We're all of us family.
Oh.
I gotta turn it down. I'm sitting right across from Lisette, so we get an echo. Hold on, I'll come up. Hear me from there?
Yeah.
One of the questions that I've been getting is people are concerned that when you're showing rentals that you don't need a buyer broker's agreement, and any property that you show, you do need some form of a buyer broker's agreement before you can show it. That's law. So I think that need to be put out there. And I guess as we go along, but that's been one of the main questions that I've gotten.
Anybody have any other questions that they can think of while we're waiting for more people?
Daniela in the chat said, what do I have to do when hosting an open house? I haven't used them, but I have a question.
Okay, so when you're hosting a lifestyle open house, you're there representing the seller. So you do not need to have a buyer broker's agreement. But the moment that you decide that maybe that you're going to work with that seller, either show them another property or even the property you're at, and they want to become a buyer, then you do need to have one signed.
We might.
Anybody else have any questions?
It's gonna be better. This is gonna be better.
So that there's already like 41 people on here.
Yeah, so we had 30 and then Marcel said there were about 33 in the other room. So maybe
Okay.
another minute and then I would say let's just get started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a quick clarification on the open house that you said. So if you're coming as the buyer's agent, I mean, if you're not the listing agent, and let's say you're hosting an open house for someone, you don't need to have any showing agreement or anything like that. So no agreement at all.
As long as it's a lifestyle listing.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Clause the lease. The lease is the right to.
Muy bien, vino a recoger.
What if you host another open house for another brokerage?
In
Like-
that case, you're not representing the seller because the seller belongs to lifestyle. So that you would need one.
So don't.
Right.
All right. I think we should just get started now.
Okay. All righty then. So, well, we have new people on here. I'm just gonna give my name. I'm Lisette Cunningham. I'm out of the plantation office. And let's get started. I know that we're basically talking about the buyer's broker agreement, but I'm going to start real quick with the listing agreement, the new one, just so that everyone can understand what options the sellers have and how to pay us. So I'm opening up the form so that we can all see it. Let me hide this here. Okay. So the listing agreement is pretty much the same as it has always been. There's just been some changes. But for this class, all I really want to go over is how the seller, what are the ways that we can do the compensation. Okay. So on line 106 is where the compensation is. And what you're going to do is there's two ways, as we know. The seller can say, I'm paying my listing agent a certain amount of compensation. And just the listing agent. And then he can also say, I'm going to pay like what we've always done, that we've got I'm paying the brokerage and you guys are sharing it with the buyer's broker. Okay. So depending on what the seller wants to do is what you would put here. And then here is where it comes down to where it gets broken up between buyer brokers. So on line 142 is where it starts. Seller authorizes broker to offer compensation to buyer's broker in the amount of. So that's the way we've been doing business the whole time.
My last name, Diman.
That's the way we've been doing business the whole time, where the only difference is going to be is that it's not going to be on the MLS. So in that case, we're all lifestyle, so I can use numbers. In that case, we would put, let's say that they're paying 6 and we're splitting it. So in that case, I would put 6 on the top over here. The second choice is, we would be, is B, where seller authorized broker to offer compensation to buyer's broker from seller in the amount of, then there's a percent or a price. The compensation will be set forth in a separate written agreement between seller and buyer broker. So basically, this is saying the seller's going to pay at closing out the buyer broker. It's not coming from lifestyle. It's not going from broker to broker. It's going from seller to broker. Okay. And that form that they're saying will be set forth in a separate written agreement. We will look at those forms next real quickly, and then we can go from there. Your third choice, which is C, is no compensation will be offered to buyer's broker. Okay. So really quick on that. If anybody has any questions, please ask in the chat so that we can, if I have to go back up to something, we can do that. Okay. So hold on. I'm trying to, everybody, it would be much better if everybody can make sure they're muted, please.
Lisette, if you can make me a co-host, I don't know how I lost that, but I can mute while you're.
Okay. You can, here we go. You want to explain to me how to do that? Do I look for you, Letty, and make you a?
Yeah, that's probably easier. There should be like the 3 dots next to my name.
Yeah, I see. It says make host.
It doesn't say make co-host?
No.
Okay. No, because then you'll lose the screen share.
Okay.
That wasn't the other one.
It's fine. If we can just mute, that would help a lot so we can get through this.
Thanks. Okay, so here's the first form of compensation that we were talking about. This is the seller broker to buyer broker. Again, let's talk about, this is the way we've been doing life, the way we've been working. Hold on a second, let me open this up better. The way we've been working this whole time, where the selling broker pays the buyer broker. So we don't have the MLS anymore. So this is what's going to be, did it do it? Okay. This is what's going to be our guarantee that that selling broker is going to pay our buyer broker. So when you call your listing agents and say, hey, what are they paying? They give you an amount and it's coming from the broker. This is the form that needs to be signed and included in the offer. This is your guarantee. Now, the seller is not the one signing this. It's the brokerage. Okay, so because this is between, so let's say lifestyle and buyer brokers A. So they're the ones that are coming into agreement because this is what's coming out. Okay. If the seller is the one paying it, which is option B, then at this point, this is sent in with the offer, and this is signed by the seller. Okay. These forms are very simple. Just if you read through them, it's just the normal stuff. You put in the buyer broker, the seller's name, property address, and the terms. If it's left blank, it's 30 days. You want to make sure when you're putting it in that at least you're covered for the term of until closing. Okay. And then here's where you put that information. Okay. So if the third option is chosen, which the seller is not paying any commission, then at that point, your buyer broker agreement goes into effect where your buyer is going to be paying you what you agreed with on there, or your buyer can negotiate with the seller, asking for seller to pay compensation to his agent. Okay? All right, now that and they do have modifications to these compensation agreements, so there has to be some type of change. You can do a modification to it.
Yes, how do you feel, girl?
Okay? Letty, do we have any questions or anything that so far?
I do. This is Andres. Just real quick. So, I mean, I'm assuming that we're going to be operating under, for the most part, say if I'm the listing agent for my seller, it would be basically a seller to buyer broker compensation agreement that we're going to be using. I mean, it's not going to be, and at least in my case, I'm going to assume that seller broker pays buyer broker. It's going to be mainly seller to buyer broker compensation agreement. At least that's the way I'm going to approach it.
So here's the thing. At the end of the day, the reason why we're in this situation is because they have to have the choice.
Yes.
So we can't, I understand what you're saying, but we can't, everybody runs their business, but we can't actually say this is the only way I'm
Got it.
gonna
Right.
do.
Right.
Okay? Okay.
I'm just asking what, and I guess I'll have a conversation with Leti about this, as far as what the approach we will try to accomplish is. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay. So let's go ahead and discuss the exclusive buyer brokers agreement. We're going to work it because we are all here assumed as being transaction. That's what we are here, transaction brokers. We're going to use that form. And I'm going to go over how to complete it. Everybody needs to read the form. Everybody needs to get familiar with the form. But if I go line by line here, we'll be here forever. We just want to go through how to complete it. So basically, if you notice here, and I'm going to start with the parties, just making comments, the consumer that used to say buyer, they changed it to consumer because that's the same thing. If it's a landlord, if it's a tenant looking for it. So this will cover tenants and buyers. Okay. Broker is Lifestyle International Realty. Okay. The term of the agreement is what you negotiate with your buyer. It can be a month, it can be 2 months, so it can be 6 months. That's your negotiation with your buyer on how long they want to stay with this agreement with you. Okay. The next part is the property. The property is consumers interested in acquiring real property as follows, or as otherwise accepted to consumer. So type of property. We suggest you put residential if that's what we're doing. If your your buyer says, I want a single family, and you just put single family, and then they end up buying a townhouse, you're not covered. So you want to just put residential. Location goes back to where. If it could be as close to a neighborhood, it can be a city, it can be a county, it can be multiple counties. It could be the state of Florida. You've got to remember that what's on this agreement is what you can get paid for. If you put Broward County only and they end up purchasing in West Palm Beach, you're not covered under this agreement.
Oh, so
Oh my God, you read my mind.
Max, you had a question?
yes, I do have a question. I'm just want to make sure I heard that correctly. For the type of property, we can just put residential or commercial rather than townhouse, or single family or anything of that sort. Instead of putting some of those, you only can put residential or commercial to be covered.
You can be as specific or as broad.
Okay, but I could put multiple, right? I can put single family, townhouse, condo, whatever the case may be.
Which at that point would just be all residential.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the next part is talking about broker's obligations. So that is what you all need to read. What's very important here for you guys to see is the fair housing. So they have that in there. Okay, so B is also important. Consumer understands that broker may work with other prospective consumers who want to acquire the same property as consumer. If broker submits offer by competing consumers, broker will notify consumer that a competing offer has been made, but will not disclose any of the offer's material terms or conditions. So that's something new that we have. They're looking at if they're telling the buyer, hey, I can be putting an offer in for you and for another buyer to the same property. But you do need to let them know if you do, but not disclose anything that has to do with your other offer. Okay. All right, then we've got the consumer's obligations. So it actually protects us. It also says that I'm conducting all negotiations and efforts to locate suitable property only through broker and referring to broker all inquiries of any kind from real estate licensees, property owners, or any other source. If consumer contacts or is contacted by an owner or real estate licensee who's working with an owner or views property unaccompanied by broker, consumer will, at first opportunity, advise the owner or real estate licensee that consumer is working with and represented exclusively by broker. So what this is doing is putting the same obligations that we have, like we're going to work with you, you've got to come back to us. So it's giving us more of a contract where these buyers have some more of a responsibility to stay working with us and not just change to any other broker when they want. So again, it's just, it is a good thing for us. Number 6 is the retainer. Retainer is a non-refundable fee that as a broker, as an agent, you can charge the buyer up front, and you can decide if you want to be credited to him at closing or how you want to do that. Okay. The next part is your compensation. Compensation which is earned when during the term of this agreement or any renewal or extension, consumer or any person acting for or on behalf of consumer contracts to acquire real property as specified in this agreement or defaults on any contract to acquire property. This compensation is for broker service for consumer. Compensation received by broker, if any, from the owner or owner broker for services rendered to a consumer will reduce any amount owed by consumer per this paragraph. So basically, this is where you're going to be able to show them. In that line right there, it says, my services are 3%, and I'm going to, if the seller broker or the seller pays me, whatever they pay me is deducted from this 3%, and you're only responsible for the balance. Okay? The buyer is only responsible for the balance. So that's when you're having this conversation with the buyer, you're explaining, and this is the important part on this. Our first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to get that compensation from the seller broker. And if they're not offering it, then we're going to go to the seller. Then you can also, and you can still negotiate it in your contract that they pay. So this kind of makes them feel more at ease that they're not going to be, if they can't afford to pay that they have a choice of other ways of doing this. Okay, and this is just pretty much like the same thing with the listing agreements we have here, the lease. So if you're doing a lease, this is where you would go ahead and put the amount. Okay, always remember, depending on what kind of lease you're doing, it's normally what they do is we normally get half the month rent. If it's a short-term lease, a lot of times they pay a percentage of the gross lease value. So if you're working with somebody who's a short-term rental, that's usually how you're going to get paid. Okay. C, option broker will pay. Sorry, I want to go back for a second because I did forget something that's important. Let's go back to A. So A is either a dollar amount or a percentage, or a dollar amount or a percentage plus a fee. That's where you would put the lifestyle transaction fee. Okay. So now at this point, you're disclosing that besides this percentage, we're also charging the lifestyle transaction fee. Okay. Any questions so far on that?
Gotta get the nose right. That's where I'm going to.
Okay, I guess not. All right, let's go to the next part, which is your protection period. Guys, it's just the same thing. Think about the same type of things that we have in listing agreements. This is basically the same type of agreement. So the protection period, consumer will compensate broker if within, and if you leave it blank, it's 30 days. If you can put 90, 120, it all depends on what you want to do there. After termination date, consumer contracts to acquire any property which was called to consumer's attention by broker or any other person, or found by consumer during the term of this agreement, consumer obligated to pay broker's fee seized upon consumer entering into a good faith exclusive buyer broker agreement with another broker after termination date. So here's what this means. At the end of the day, if they cancel, if they terminate and they go try to buy a property that you had shown them, as long as you're within your protection period, they do owe you a commission. Now, if they go into another broker, exclusive broker buyer agreement with another agent and then purchase that property, they are no longer obligated to pay you a commission. But the important part here, it says consumer entering into a good faith. So a good faith is not, oh, I'm not going to buy this property with you. I'm going to wait. And then I'm going to go to my cousin who's not going to charge me anything and put the property and put it under contract with that. So that is how they're trying to protect us from people doing that. Okay. The next part is conditional termination. At consumer's request, broker may agree to conditionally terminate this agreement. If broker agrees to conditionally terminate this agreement, consumer must enter a written agreement to this effect and pay a cancellation fee of. So if you do cancellation fees, this is where you would put it. Broker may void the conditional termination and consumer will pay the fee stated in the compensation paragraph, less the cancellation fee, if from the early termination date to termination date plus protection period, if applicable, consumer contracts to acquire any property which prior to the early termination date was found by consumer or called to consumer's attention by broker or any other person. So basically what they're saying here is, again, it's not so that they can give us a, say, okay, I want to cancel, and then they're going to go and try to buy the property away without using you. So this is basically another protection that they're giving us. We have the same thing with the listings. We have a conditional termination. Okay. And that pretty much is the agreement. So for right now, when you sent this to AuthentiSign, this is for your buyer to sign it, and then you sign it, and then it does need to go to either it needs to go to the broker or to one of the partners to get them to sign the agreement. Any questions on this so far? Guess everybody's clear, huh?
Wait, I came in a little late. So you were saying that basically that for leases and everything, it's transacted this way.
Yes. This also applies to leases.
Okay.
Does that count? I'm sorry, for leases, if you're representing the landlord or the owner, you'll complete this form in conjunction with the listing agreement?
No, this is when you're representing the tenant.
The tenant side.
Yes, when you're representing the tenant side. Anybody else? Everything else we're good?
So you said the broker has to sign it for it to be, what's the word? Like
Executed?
executed, yes.
Yes. Either a broker or one of the managing partners is what I'm I have right now.
Okay, so after it gets signed by the buyer, we send it over to the managing partner or broker to get it signed.
Yes, it's
Okay.
going to be part of your transaction desk checklist.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm sure there'll be more about this coming from the brokerage in general for future reference on this. Okay. Any other questions?
No, man. Different.
Can't find who's not muted. Okay, right here. All righty. So no questions on this. Let's go over some other stuff real quick.
I did have one question.
I do have a question as well.
Okay, so if a client is under contract with this buyer broker agreement with someone, and then they sign another one with another agent, the one that they sign with the new agent, that one takes precedence over the one that they already have? Or do they really have to go through like a canceling? Because I feel like Josh Cadillac mentioned something around that, but I just want to clarify that. Let's say if somebody already has a buyer broker agreement with someone and they're like, I don't like that person, I want to go with another agent instead. Once they sign the other one, the old one is invalidated. Is that correct? Or
That's correct.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Someone
No
else?
notice needs to be given to the other agent that they're canceling with?
I'm sorry, say that again.
No notice needs to be given to the other agent they're canceling with?
No, they should be giving a notice. It says cancellation, a conditional cancellation. So it should be in writing that they should be canceling with you. But
Okay.
what happens is if they go into another agreement after they canceled with you, that other agreement is preference to yours.
Yeah, but the procedure is cancel, on paper, then sign the other agreement.
That's the way it should be done. Yes.
That's the way it should be
Yeah,
done.
but if they don't, you're saying that if it's not done that way and it's just done like, hey, I'm gonna go switch over, and there's no formal documents, it's no legal ramification the first agent can have over that transaction, right?
Well, what they're saying is, and it goes back to that, it should be a good faith. They're entering into a good faith exclusive buyer brokerage agreement with another agent. So they're actually, it's supposed to be good faith. They're gonna have to come back. And then after this, remember, going after these people, these buyers is a broker decision. So I don't know how they would handle that, but that is a broker decision if they're going to go after buyers.
I got you.
Okay.
I can give a recommendation because in my country it's always been like that. So what we used to do is we used to sign, like, you can do one agreement for like all Florida, but every apartment or a property that you show, you make them sign on this particular address, and then you can write what is the fee for cancellation and put it very high number.
So I went straight, and I'm going to show you there's other forms that can be used. I went straight to the exclusive buyer broker agreement because this is the one that we should all be trying to get. This is the one that gives us the most protection. Okay. So I started with this one because I wanted to go over that, but we do have other choices of what forms we can use with buyers. So I'm going to go over those really quickly. So, and what she just mentioned, there is one form where you can do it by property if you really want to go that route. Okay. So let's go into the other one. So this one is called the property pre-touring agreement. I think this is the one we'll use the most with leads when we're first meeting them. Because this is the one, the way they call it is, this is the one where you're meeting for coffee. So you met somebody and you're meeting them for coffee, and you don't want to sign anything that is taking you to obligating you to be a long time with this agent, or maybe you don't want to work with the buyer. So this is an easy one. This has the least protection, but it does tell you, if you see on the bottom, broker compensation from any source will not exceed the amount of the compensation in writing agreement with you. That's not what I was looking for. I'm sorry. Okay. Here it is. If you wish to work with broker to purchase a property, broker may ask you to sign a separate agreement detailing all parties' responsibility during the sale. So this is something giving them, hey, I'm going to show you this property. We're going to see if we want to work together, or if you want to see other properties. This can be for a couple of days, and you don't have, this is not property specific. If after we decide you want to put an offer, I am going to ask you to sign the broker buyer's agreement. And it's here. So they signed it when they agreed with this one. So this form is very easy. This is like just for when we're meeting, and I would say leads and stuff like that, because this is the one that they don't know you to get them to sign. From there, you have the showing agreement. So the showing agreement here, now we have the obligations come in, the consumer's obligation, the compensation, the same way as the one that we did prior, the broker buyer's agreement. The only difference here is under properties, this agreement applies to the following properties. So this agreement is property specific. So if we're showing 5 properties, you would put the 5 properties there. Everything else stays the same as the other that we had done before. So they consider this one, now we're dating. And in the buyer brokers agreement, they consider it as a marriage. Any questions?
So I have a comment, Lisette. So going back to the pre-touring agreement,
Yes.
that one, just so you guys know, it will be in transaction desk, and that one is fully good to go with the boards and everything. There is Zillow has a touring agreement as well. The Miami board has already said they will not be allowing their agents to use that in lieu of the Florida Realtors forms. So make sure that you are still getting this signed, like just using the Zillow, or if realtor.com comes up with something that does not cover you and the liability as an agent.
Okay. And I agree, the FAR went out and above to make these forms for us so that we're in compliance.
Yeah.
So let's not use the forms that they're giving us. Okay. So, we do have modifications for the exclusive buyer broker agreement and showing agreement. So I don't know if you cannot get paid more than what's on this agreement. So if you negotiate it with your buyer, 2% and the seller's paying 3%, unless you modify the form, you get 2% and your buyer gets that extra 1%.
Oh, so you're able to modify the form after you see how much the other agent is paying.
Yes. But your buyer has to be able to sign it. So right now, buyers don't realize that if we go back to them and say, hey, they're paying this, that they would be getting the difference.
Do we need to disclose that to them?
Yes.
They would get the difference? Okay.
That's why ideally, right, this is a business decision, but that's where you should determine on the first go what that compensation percentage you want to put on there.
Okay.
Because there will be people that will say, oh, I'll just put 1% or 0.5% just to get it signed, and then not realizing it's gonna bite you in the end.
Could you use up to 3%? Or it has to be 3%?
No, it has to say a number, but again, compensation is fully negotiable. So there is no set number. It could be 5, it could be 6, it could be 10, right?
Right. Yep. And remember, so if you like, you went higher on your number and then the seller's paying less, you can modify it.
So it would be better to just to start like higher. So then if you want to modify, you can just tell the seller, oh, just sign this form for lower payment, right?
Well, what you're doing there is is not the seller, you're actually talking to your buyer. This is between you and your buyer. So that would be how you would get them to understand that you're modifying it lower. I think I think lowering won't be as hard as hiring it.
Right.
Okay. And it's just like a normal modification that we've always had. Again, the only thing is, if you'll notice, every form we have now will say brokerage commissions are not set by law and fully negotiable. Broker may not receive compensation from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to with consumer. So like even bonuses. Okay. So you all, it's a different lifestyle right now. Let's put it that way. But we've got to just get used to it. This is going to be the new way of working. And let's not try to figure out how to get around this. They will find out. and the fines are not cheap. So depending on the boards, there's, if, I know the beaches board said and they don't have, if they request an exclusive buyer brokerage agreement from you and you don't have it, the fine is $1,000. And it will increase. If we try to be creative on the MLS, the fines will be big and they're not going to accept anything to make it look like. We cannot put a link on our listings that take us to, in the MLS, that'll take you to compensation. So don't, if we know we can put them on we can advertise compensation on Lifestyle's website. I think they're working on how they're going to be able to do that. But that's the only place. You can use social media. You can, if you have a listing, you can put that the seller's broker is paying the buyer broker. You can put that form in your listing so that people know that it's there. You can't upload it. Just remember, nothing on the MLS can show anything that shows, and I'm repeating this and I'm being because it's going to be a big thing. Okay. All right. So one more thing that can we put a PDF on the chats? Okay. So I found this from NAR, and I think it would help all of us. And it's basically made for the public. One is for home sellers and one is for buyers, home buyers. And it basically is a document that helps the consumer understand what happened without us having to do all the explanations. And it even takes you to where you can go to facts.realtor where it shows them. Because the last thing they want us doing is they don't want us trying to explain this settlement to everybody. You don't want to do that because at the end of the day, we cannot explain something that we don't really understand 100%. We don't want to sound like we're giving legal advice, none of that stuff. So they're giving us a lot of documentation that I feel we can use. We just have to know how to use it and keep it in our tools. Okay, any questions?
Can you share that?
Yeah, I'm going to share it now in the chat.
Thank you.
Oh, we got some questions in the chat.
Can buyer have few agreements with different brokerages at the same time?
Okay, so the question is, can buyer have different agreement with different brokerages at the same time? Yes. Here's the thing. When it goes, so let's say I have an agreement. This buyer is buying here in Fort Lauderdale and I'm covering Broward with them. But they have another agent because they might buy in Naples instead. So that other agent can be covering the Naples area. Now, if it says the state of Florida, you're covered in the whole state of Florida. Then it becomes it goes into being a dispute. When it was, well, who signed, which one did they sign first?
So it's not exclusive. I thought it was exclusive.
It is. As long as it's exclusive to the terms that are on the agreement. So if you put in the location, Broward County, that buyer is only exclusive to you in Broward County.
So somebody says, I want to have exclusive relationship with you in Hialeah only, and then another one with another agent in Doral. They can do that.
They can.
Oh my gosh.
It's going to open up more lawsuits.
So
let's go for it.
It's gonna be interesting at the beginning, and that's why you have to make sure your terms are right. If you covered, if they tell you just me and Hialeah, you have the right to decide, well, if you're gonna work with me for Hialeah only and somebody else for Doral when I can cover both, do you really want to work with that buyer?
Exactly. No, it all comes down, guys, remember, it all comes down to the relationship we have with these buyers, which is usually good. We're kind of like
Yes.
in control.
Yes. And, you know, a lot of people have been asking, so what if the buyer doesn't want to sign the agreement? Do not show them property. If the buyer does not want to sign the agreement, and if the buyer says to you, well, I have somebody else will show it to me without me signing anything. You say, okay, let them show them to you, but do you really want to work with somebody who's willing to break the law? And are you willing to work with them for your biggest purchase that you're trying to do?
Can I have a question? That was me who said if the buyer can have multiple agreements at the same time.
Yes.
So when we meet the buyer and, you know, we don't know the person, right? So we start to communicate. So that's our, let's call it duty or to explain him that if I work with you, so this is exclusive for the, you know, the area that we cover, or we should ask them, do you guys have you already, do you have already the agreement signed with another brokerage on this area? Because, you know, they may not be aware of this, or somebody showed them one property, signed the agreement for the whole area, and they, you know, they may not know to full extent what it means behind this, right?
You're right. So this is what we've been saying is the same way we do a listing presentation, we should do a buyer presentation. And basically now more than ever. And so I got you, you're meeting a lead for the first time. You might do that pre-touring one, but your goal is to get them into the buyer broker agreement, the exclusive one. And how you do that is you have to educate them. You have to also show them your value. What is the value you have? What are you going to do? Because we don't just open doors, which is what a lot of buyers think. So where we have to explain the process. This is what we do. This is where we're involved. These are all the different parties. So the minute you treat this more like a business where we're actually meeting, and we want to make sure that we both can work together. So those are the things that we have to show. So as a business owner, you should be in the mentality of saying, okay, let's meet. The days of us just running out to show a property because somebody called us is over, which is a good thing. Because at the end of the day, we're now they're being held to a different standard with us also.
Okay, and sometimes there were, I agree with you. Sometimes there were occasions when, you know, they call you and say, you know what, my realtor is out of state right now, or my realtor is here and there, and you communicate with them and say, okay, I'm going to show you, and you explain them. But in this case, when you have signed agreement, or they already have signed the agreement with another brokerage, and the agent just happens to be out of the state for this weekend, so do you sign with them this agreement for this particular property and you explain them, they look, if I'm going to show it to you, so you know what I mean? There are people who, yeah. So I'm trying to explain to myself how, because basically it's agent for the weekend. Yeah, no, I don't want to be the agent, but you know, but that's a lead that you're trying to work with and trying to explain your benefits. And like you said, trying to sell yourself. Let's, you know, be clear, right? We are selling ourselves, our services, our expertise. But in this case, when they already work with someone for quite some time and they do have this agreement in place, can you at this point sign another one for this property, or it's not how it's going to work? Because it's the same location, same Miami-Dade County, for example.
Right. Yeah. Actually, it's a great question. And I'm going to have to get back to you on that one, because I'm not sure, Letty, I don't know if you have any insight on that, because I do understand.
You must always remember too, these agreements is putting all the responsibility, or most of the responsibility, on the agent. The consumer is not bound to the same ethical agreement that we are as professionals. So basically, it's your choice to decide, all right, this buyer has already disclosed that they've signed a buyer broker's agreement with another agent. Now, you got to understand something. If you get them to sign with you and you take them out for the weekend, what if that agent has already shown them that property? Or maybe the agent may have that jurisdiction already agreed upon to be compensated. And what happens is that, all right, fine, you go out and you do that. Now they come after you, then you got a whole different recurring calls, and you got a whole nother can of worms that's open up. So we got to be smart about it, and we got to value our time. Do you really want to, all right, she's, the agent's out of town for the weekend. Is it going to kill them to wait till they come back in town? And we have to respect each other, because if you just jump in on anybody that's willing to sign 3 buyer brokers agreements with 3 different agents, who's to say they're not going to sign 4? And you're out of the loop anyway, so you wasted your time.
Yeah, I would say 100% what Willie said. Also, I think there's 2 options there. If you have a buyer and you're going out of town and you have an exclusive buyer broker agreement, your duty is to contact someone, to put them in touch with someone that can show them property while you're away, right? That's what any respectable agent should be doing. So that they don't run into this issue and they're not on Zillow requesting 20 showings, right? And you can create an agreement and, whatever, if you want to do a per showing basis or whatever that looks like for you. However, if you don't want to do that, and you get that lead or that person that wants to see property, then you could do a pre-touring agreement for that one property. Now, when that agent comes back and they want to put an offer on that one property, they can't, because now that agreement is with you, because you showed them that property. So it does protect you, not that. I know that was your question. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, it does. I'm not saying to cross the line and be that agent who steals the clients. No, I'm saying that sometimes the other side is not that good, right? And they do want to switch, but they don't know their rights or their understanding or anything. And I'm trying to understand. I'm sorry. I'm outside with the kids. And that's, yeah. I'm asking about the good side, not, to steal the agents. No, I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
So, okay. Because we were just told that they can have 2 simultaneous agreements, and I do want to make that clear and educate the buyers that that's the way it works. So I do want to be respected with my time and everything, but I also do want to make it clear that, while it's possible, I would rather, not to have 2 agreements with different brokerages and run around, try to compete. No, I mean.
Yeah, and that's where that's where the transparency is coming in, right? Where we're being transparent, but then also the buyer is going to need to be transparent, right? And they're going to need to let us know. One of the first questions that we should be asking now is, hey, have you signed anything with another broker? Because that's going to either give you a green light or give you a red light, similar to a listing. If there's something listed, you should not be approaching that person, right? Unless it's expired. So similar.
Thank you. Got it. Okay.
And you don't really want to work with a buyer that's willing to sign a whole bunch of different broker agreements. And at the end of the day, it is still a contract.
So do we have a cancellation agreement to provide, or email is enough?
I think that as long as it's in writing from the seller, and an email should be, from the buyer, I'm sorry, from the buyer, it should be enough.
May I say something?
Sure.
Hi, good morning, guys. Good afternoon. So, Ronald, the mortgage broker. With a lot of buyers right now, when I'm doing the pre-approval consultation, I'm already talking to them about, getting their buyer's agreement in, if they've signed their buyer's agreement. So it's very, very important because those lenders were already asking for it because it's going to be part of their closing costs.
That's a great point. Because now more than ever, you want to have the right team, right? You want to have people that are already putting this in the consumer's ears, that have your back. Right? You don't want, some random person to have the loan and not even know what's going on. You want to have someone like Ronald that, is preparing your buyer and explaining to them that this is a reality. I had an agent the other day that tried to get it signed, and the person, the buyer was like, "Oh my God, what are you talking about? I've never signed anything." She felt like she was being scammed. So the more they hear it from different places, the easier the transition is going to be.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. No, I'm working right now with an agent. Her name is Jacqueline with Lifestyle for Lauderdale. I don't know if Jacqueline, you on the Zoom? Anyways, so Jacqueline and I, we've been working with this client for a very long time now. A lot of listings, showing them a lot of properties, running a lot of numbers, and the person's not pulling the trigger. So I'm like, hey, let's get her to sign this buyer's agreement before she goes somewhere else, and then we just lose all this time, So again, I repeat myself. I'm asking everybody, and let's say I'm also giving them scenarios to where we can finance the buyer agent commission. So in my pre-approval presentations, I'm already like running numbers like, look, worst case scenario, if you do have to pay your buyer's agent, this is how we can work it into the numbers. So we got your back. So if I'm not your lender, definitely you should be having this conversation already with whatever lender that you may be working, because we're gonna have to all work together right now to get through this, especially with the numbers. That's all I had to say.
Okay, so I just have one other thing that I want to bring up to everybody. This is not only just about the buyer side. If anybody has an active listing on the MLS as of tomorrow, right, Letty, over in Miami too, as of tomorrow, the commissions will not be on the MLS anymore. So if you have an active listing, there's a couple of different procedures that need to be done. If the listing agreement that you wrote that listing on is dated with the amended at the bottom of 3/2024, all that needs to be done is a disclosure, which I'll put on the chat, a disclosure that FAR created, and it just needs to be emailed to your sellers, and I'm giving them the disclosure about what's going on. And so that would be one. It doesn't have to be signed, just email to them. If you used a listing agreement form prior to that one, you have to do a modification to the listing agreement. And FAR has already created that. I can put that one in the chat, but you do need to have that out to your sellers. The other thing is, if you're under contract at the moment and you haven't closed, we highly suggest that if you haven't done it already, you print out PDF, the commission from the MLS, because that's the only thing you have to show, because after it's gone, it's not there anymore. That when you put that offer in, there was that commission being offered. So that would be today's job. If you're under contract, it's a must.
Not the seller can come back and say, I never agreed to do it. You won't have proof.
Yeah, if the seller comes back and says that they didn't do it, that they didn't have that, or the agent comes back, you don't have the guarantee of the MLS like we've always had.
Lisa, I have a question. You probably went over this already, but I forgot. So I'm already under contract. The buyer agreement that I have with my client is for 3%, but the seller's only offering 2.5%.
Okay.
So how do I deal with that? Do I do a modification and just accept the 2.5%, or do I do the 0.5 charge her for it a different way?
Well, here is the thing, that's your business decision of what you want to do. It's a modification. So if you decide that you're going to, that there is going to, I'm sorry, I just looked at the chat. If you're gonna charge the buyer that 0.5%, then you leave it at the 3. If you decide that you want to go ahead and lower it to accept the 2.5 that the seller is, then you modify the buyer broker agreement with the modification.
Okay, thanks.
There's a question in the chat. It says, if you have a listing with a landlord for a rental, the deposit will no longer state 3 times the rent, 1 month as commission.
I'm not understanding do you understand the question, Lati?
So, you
No.
know, where you put
Chloe, are you here? Can you elaborate?
securities, will that still be put in the rental listings? Where they put first month, because at the bottom, it'll put a 1/2 a month compensation,
Yeah,
that's gone.
the compensation's gone.
Right, but they also put where you put first month and 2 move-in costs.
Yeah, so that what Will is thinking, she's asking is, will that still be where, you know how we have on the listing that first month, second, and first month 2 securities, or that should still be there. The only thing that's taken off is compensation.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And remember, anything that's not supposed to be there would not be an option when you're submitting the listing anyway.
Right, so all these fields that have been taken off, they won't be an option for you to put in. We didn't go over, real quick, one thing, the seller concession, because I know a lot of times we get kind of confused with that. The MLS that will have seller concession. So I know that Miami is allowing an amount. The Beaches is not. The Beaches is just saying yes or no. The concession cannot be shown as anything that it's only can be used to pay your buyer broker. And it has to be, and it's still going to be negotiated. They're saying they're willing to pay this, but it's still a negotiation. So seller concession, because a lot of people are under the impression that's the only way we can get paid. And I want to emphasize that it's not. You can get it through the buyer, the seller broker to buyer broker. You can get it from the seller, because concessions can still, and especially with, actually, Rolando, I'm going to ask you on that. Are they, I know on certain loan types, they only give, like, you can get 3% concession, 6% concession. Are they including the broker's payment if the seller does it as part of a concession?
So it's with conventional loans, you can get 3%. FHA loans, you can get 6% seller concessions. So that would be if the buyer's commission would be considered like a seller concession if we wrap it into the mortgage. Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, for example, let's say there's a listing that was at 520 and it had a 20K price reduction, so now it's 500. So that 20K gap, you can play with that 20K gap and tell the selling agent, like, look, you know, we'll give you that 520, but give me 2% of the of 500 or whatever your commission is into that gap, and then that way the seller can give you a seller concession to cover the difference. So it's all going to be, again, it's just going to be very important for buyers agents to be on these calls with the lenders to go over these numbers and wrap the commissions in, you know. But yes, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right.
There's another question from Carolina. Where are we and lifestyle agents going to post what we do offer as compensation to the buyer broker? I hear some other agents say they will have sites where they will. I think you touched on this.
So we can, as a brokerage, we can have our listings compensation on our website. Where I'm still a little confused on, and we're still trying to get the information, is they say it can't come from IDX. So I don't know if it's a separate, different website where just our listings are listed, or is it going to be somewhere else? So I don't have an answer for that on lifestyle.
Yeah, I think we said lifestyle is currently working on getting the listings up, but yeah, they can be IDX, so it can't come from any MLS feed. So it'd have to be a whole different thing.
Okay, but are we gonna be allowed to say it on our social media, for example, and things like
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Emails, everywhere but the MLS, right?
Yeah.
Even
Yes.
inside the house.
Your sign, it could be on,
Yeah.
it could be on your social media, it could be on your personal website. You just can't link your website on the MLS, that's all.
And it can be on our sign.
Yes. On the
Cool,
key.
thanks. Yeah, yeah. All right.
And also remember, you can always put that form, a copy of that form in your listings, which will show what is being paid. So if somebody goes there and they weren't able to speak to you, but at least they have the form there where it shows either that the seller signed it or the selling broker signed it.
Awesome, thank you.
One more question. Monique asks, how do you determine commission?
You're gonna let me answer that one, huh?
I answered it in the chat. I mean, I said it was a business decision. There is no standard, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole reason behind the lawsuit.
Yeah. Monique, there is no standard. We have to, it depends how much you want to work for. Let's put it that way. What you value, what your value to what you're bringing. It could be a flat fee. It can be an hourly fee. It could be a percentage. So that's just basically how you feel. It's a business decision. There's no other way of putting it.
But also remember that you want to maintain a relationship with that buyer, that consumer. And if that consumer find out that you charge 10%, everybody else charge 6%, your referrals and chances of you doing business with that consumer again just died. So you don't want to just look at it at the closing. You want to build the relationship and just have fair practice, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lourdes has a question.
I sold the house years ago. I see noticing that I can be compensated for the commission I paid. How they're going after the agents for past commissions paid. Really?
Lourdes, did you personally, like you sold your home? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. That is what I was told by an attorney, is anytime we're seeing things like that on social media or you're getting mailings, that is attorneys fishing for another class action type suit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Actually, this is another thing that I'm just remembered when we talk about action suits. If your buyer tells you, do not show me any property that is not offering a buyer agent's compensation, even if they put it in writing, do not send them a property because it's not offering. Because that would be considered steering.
Yeah.
And guess what? Buyers will forget. All of a sudden, you didn't send them a property. They found that property. And they're like, why didn't you send me that property? Well, it was an offering and you told me not to. Well, I would be willing to pay it. But you told me not to send you.
Yeah.
Send them all properties.
Now it's different if they want to, if they tell you, hey, Lisette, I can't afford to pay you. I cannot, please don't show me anything that is not offering the compensation. As long as that's in writing, you can do that. Just be very careful and make sure it's in writing.
Very careful. Very careful about that. And you can always explain to them, you can't pay my compensation, but we can always put it in the offer and negotiate it with the seller to pay it. Because if you don't give them that option, which is, it is valid, and another agent tells them that they could have done that, they're gonna come back to you. If a seller broker is offering a compensation, there's really nothing to worry about. Yes, absolutely. If the seller's broker, it's business as always.
Which I think will be the case more often than not.
Yes.
Of course, there will be those that will say no because the agent probably didn't explain to the seller that their pool of buyers is going to shrink. But
Yeah. That is the biggest thing, is explaining. And as listing agents, we have to really know how to explain to these sellers.
yeah, because the media is telling them something very different.
One thing that I've done is remind them when they bought their house. Did they have to pay? And if they did, would they have been able to afford it?
Yeah. All
Okay.
right. Any other questions? All right, well, keep an eye out for any updates from the brokerage, from your branch. And of course, we're here to help and answer any questions. All right, guys.